The Forgotten City isn't the typical kind of game I tend to cover on this channel. It isn't some high-profile critical darling that I quite frankly find overrated. It isn't a polarizing title where I feel strongly enough on either side of the argument to chime in. Nor is it the hidden gem. The kind of game that I truly love to talk about. The main focus of my channel. Those games that didn't get enough press coverage, or perhaps were not treated well enough by the critics, to where most gamers either don't know it exists or completely disregarded it. No, this game is, it's a bit different. It really doesn't fit within the primary focus of this channel. It isn't some unknown or hidden gem. It did receive its fair share of media coverage, having been a well-received Skyrim mod before becoming its own thing. It garnered strong critical reception, high review scores, even earning a few random Game Award nominations here and there. And upon release, it enjoyed its 15 minutes. I remember I'd see videos about it, major outlets doing reviews, story breakdowns here and there, and deservedly so. This is a surprisingly well put together product considering its origins, and the story behind its development is one that I found particularly inspiring. A lawyer, successful, bright future in front of him, but also a passion for video games, who decides, in his spare time, to try to make one. Makes this little mod, everything seems great, people like it, awesome. Until the bosses find out. And he's effectively told, I don't think so, buddy. What is this nonsense? What are you doing? You're not allowed to do things that you love in your spare time. You are supposed to be dedicating your every waking moment to your career. You're not taking this seriously. You better knock this shit off or else. And he chooses or else. Quits his job and decides to turn this little hobby of his into a full-fledged video game. Risks everything. His future, his livelihood. Has to dip into his savings in order to finance the project. If this fails, it is over for him. But he decides to take that risk. Put everything on the line to pursue his dreams, damned be the consequences. This takes some massive cojones. Very few people are willing to do something like this. Luckily for him, it succeeded, and the Forgotten City was born. Now, I've been going through a bit of a rough patch these last several months. My whole world has been turned completely upside down. I'm not really going to get into details. You don't really care. That's not even what we're here for. We're here to talk about the video games. So why is any of this relevant? The thing is, there's been some days where I've barely had the motivation to get out of bed, much less sit down and make videos. I wanted to talk about this game, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was in a dark place. But it wasn't until I heard the story behind its development that I really felt that motivation. If this man could sacrifice everything, put his entire life on the line to pursue his dreams, I could get over what's going on and tough it out and sit down and pursue my dreams. Talk about these games, these forgotten gems, these titles that should remain in the consciousness of every gamer because they matter and they're worth playing. But that's not what any of this is really all about. I left a link in the description. It's a very interesting and inspiring story. If any of you are interested, just click on that. So, without risking any further rambling, let's get right to it. Let's talk about the game, The Forgotten City, just for a little bit. The basic premise is this. You stumble upon an old abandoned temple, fall into a pit, get sucked into a vortex, and end up thousands of years in the past in this ancient Roman city where the citizens are trapped, cursed by some golden rule to where if anyone at all breaks it, everyone is punished and turned into golden statues. And you are essentially trying to figure out some way of getting back to your own time. The gameplay is a time loop detective game where you try to unravel the mystery, repeating the same day over and over while trying to prevent somebody from breaking this golden rule. It's an interesting enough idea. Nothing particularly new or groundbreaking about it. It's a time loop game. There have been plenty of these. Especially during the time of this game's release, the genre as a whole had a bit of a resurgence. But let's be honest here. Video games have been around long enough to where true innovation, truly original ideas are so few and far between now that they're practically non-existent. Anything you could think of, there is a game about it. So true excellence isn't necessarily about innovation, but rather iteration. And I feel The Forgotten City has done more than enough to make it stand out from the crowd. There's a lot of attention to detail in its design that keeps you immersed in its game world, interested in the story, and invested in unlocking its secrets, despite its inherently repetitive nature as a time loop game. A lot of care and research was put into the setting itself, this Roman city. Little nuggets here and there, Easter eggs littered throughout the entire world that have nothing to do with the story itself, but help make this place more real. This is especially important because the Roman setting, the time period it's set in, isn't just an aesthetic choice because Romans are cool or some dumb shit like that. It is an essential aspect of the story being told. The city itself, in many regards, is a character all onto its own, with its own unique role to play that is just as vital as those of the characters trapped within it, meaning that where they are imprisoned is just as significant as why they were imprisoned there in the first place. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all I could say about the story. Any spoilers beyond the basic premise would be a huge, disgusting disservice to any of you that have yet to play this. There are plenty of YouTubers out there that have done complete story breakdowns. You could go ahead and watch those if you really want to ruin this for yourself. If you've never played it, I strongly suggest you don't, because this is an incredibly interesting story that touches on various philosophies regarding life and death, and if you suspend your disbelief just enough and indulge the fantastical, and quite frankly, there are people that legitimately believe some of these things, it provides an interesting explanation to certain things that we don't truly have an answer for. And I found it utterly fascinating. Although, for as well thought out as the city itself is, strong world building isn't going to be enough on its own to tell an excellent story. Luckily, this attention to detail isn't limited to the setting alone. It carries over into some excellent writing and this sort of open-ended approach to problem solving that kept the game fresh throughout multiple playthroughs, even though I was basically repeating the same day over and over and over and over and over again. It isn't just the obvious stuff, being able to change the outcome of a certain event the next time around. That is like the most basic thing you could do in a time loop game. If you're making one of these and can't manage to get at least that right, you shouldn't have even bothered. No, it's the little touches. The way dialogue options completely change to account for the fact that you'd already spoken to this NPC before, creating these humorous little interactions where they are in shock that you know what you know and have no idea what to do with this information, or how you get your chance at some sweet revenge against this one dickhead NPC that the last time you two spoke completely fucked you over and left you for dead. It's these little moments littered throughout the entire game that keep these repeated interactions interesting. The game even does this thing right at the beginning of a new loop where you can dump all your previously completed side quests onto this one NPC, and he goes off and completes all of those for you, leaving you free to explore new areas or finish off some other side quests you'd yet to get to, mitigating so much of that potential tedium associated with a time loop game. It offers so much freedom of exploration. You get there and you're given basic instructions, and you don't really know what to do necessarily. You start to discover as you speak to more NPCs, solve their individual problems. The game does very little by way of hand-holding. The few clues you're given are these cryptic little whispers from the statues all around as you walk by them. It is pretty much left up to you how little or how much you actually find out about what's going on in this place in order to beat it. You could beat the damn game by accident. There was this one thing that made me realize, hit me across the face, how truly special the Forgotten City is. I was just minding my own business, exploring a new area, when out of nowhere, boom, the game ends. It reveals this twist that I had no clue about, and the rolling credits start. My jaw was on the floor. I was almost disappointed. I'd been playing 2.5 hours. I hadn't done 90% of anything yet. Didn't even know what's going on. And it's over? Just like that? Then the rolling credits end, and it shows me this is just one of 4 endings. Of course, I instantly start up a new playthrough, determined to find out what these other 3 endings were. Either way, I still had no clue what the deal was with this golden rule thing, so I had that mystery left to unlock. Not only that, this little twist during my surprise, accidental beating of the game planted a seed in my mind. I thought up this fuck around and find out situation I wanted to test out as a possible solution. My very next playthrough, I decide to try a thing just to see if it would work. Of course, I'm not going to tell you what it is. Why would I do that and ruin it for you? I'm not an asshole. But it actually did. It worked. I beat the game again. This time I'd only been playing for like an hour and a half. It was incredible. Mind you, it was the shitty ending, but so what? It was so satisfying that the developers actually considered this as a possibility, something that the player might come up with and try out and reward me for it. I was so happy. And I still had 2 more playthroughs left and a bunch of stuff yet to find out. Those last 2 playthroughs were so much fun as I wrapped up all the NPC side quests, tried to figure out how to get this one ending that was actually directly connected to the accidental one I stumbled upon, and finally pieced together the puzzle as to what this golden rule is. And by the time I reached that true ending, the game had dropped a couple of bombs on me, revealed a couple of twists that made me realize this place is not what I thought it was. None of what is going on is anything like I had assumed it would be. It was such a memorable experience that when I finally put that controller down, The Forgotten City had become one of my favorite games of all time. Having said that, the game isn't perfect. I can't even think of a perfect game. Every game has its own little thing, but I feel I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I just showered it with blind praise and didn't bring up a couple of these things that I noticed. There are a few weird graphical quirks. On occasion, you'll try to speak to an NPC and they won't properly face you, and you end up talking to the side of their head. The combat is... I'm not sure how I feel about the combat. It was serviceable. You have your little bow and arrow. You have a little kick. It just felt overly simplistic and in some regards almost shoehorned in as if combat is necessary. A lot of games do this sort of thing where they add combat for combat's sake when it really wasn't necessary. Neither one of these things are by any means a deal breaker. The game is still incredible, but I feel they have to be mentioned. You could take it or leave it, and the little graphical thing didn't even matter much to me. It's just something I noticed. One of those things that make you kind of laugh when they happen. All things considered, it is an amazing product, especially considering the origins. To think that this game might have not even existed if it wasn't for one man's decision to sacrifice everything to make it happen. The Forgotten City isn't just one of my favorite games, but something that has become personally meaningful to me. The reason this video exists is because this game exists. And not just because it's a video game and I'm talking about it. No, it's because of the reality behind the video game. I was ready to give up on this whole YouTube thing, wondering what's the point. But if Nick Pierce could take that risk and say, fuck it, what is the worst that could happen? Fully knowing that the worst that could happen is absolute ruin, I could pursue my dream, regardless of whether or not failure is an option. If I could get one of you to play this game, quite frankly, that would be a double bonus. This video exists solely for its own sake at this point, and I appreciate all of you that have made it this far and have tolerated these tangential ramblings. Till the next time.